The Earth is full of many beautiful sights, created by both nature and man. Rainforests and local wildlife sit in perfect contrast to tsunamis and man-eaters, from man-made monuments of peace to man-made demonstrations of destruction. There appears to be a balance or harmony that can be seen from the start of mankind. For every masterpiece that sits in a gallery, there lies an innocent life taken prematurely. For each lunar eclipse that blesses our sky at night, there's a flood waiting to indiscriminately change lives. Whilst most focus on the positive aspects, I think it's important and somewhat comforting to focus on the negatives. I wanted to create a series that shows off some topics, photos, quotes, and other bits and pieces that are too small to warrant their own video, and they don't quite fit with the other series I've created. So I welcome you to Inhumanity. Hurricane Katrina, a Category 3 hurricane, struck the Gulf Coast of the United States on August 29, 2005, making landfall near Burris Triumph, Louisiana, with maximum sustained winds of approximately 125 miles per hour. Just before the hurricane hit, this terrifying emergency broadcast message was played.
Hurricane Katrina, a most powerful hurricane with unprecedented strength, rivaling the intensity of Hurricane Camille of 1969. Most of the area will be uninhabitable for weeks, perhaps longer. At least one half of well-constructed homes will have roof and wall failure. High-rise office and apartment buildings will sway dangerously, a few to the point of total collapse. All windows will blow out. Persons, pets, and livestock exposed to the winds will face certain death if struck. Water shortages will make human suffering incredible by modern standards. Do not venture outside.
Imagine sitting at home and seeing this. To say most would panic, I feel, is an understatement. Some of the wording of this is uniquely terrifying.
Water shortages will make human suffering incredible by modern standards.
Which sadly was not an exaggeration. The hurricane caused extensive flooding, affecting around 80% of New Orleans as levees and floodwalls were breached. Over 1,800 lives were lost in the hurricane and its aftermath, making it one of the deadliest hurricanes in U.S. history. The economic impact was staggering, with total damages exceeding $125 billion, ranking it among the costliest natural disasters in the United States. Evacuation efforts faced challenges, and the response to those unable to evacuate was criticized for being slow and inadequate. Subsequent changes in emergency response and preparedness were made at both federal and state levels, with a focus on rebuilding and strengthening infrastructure and flood defenses to reduce vulnerability to future storms. Hurricane Katrina stands as a stark reminder of the devastating power of hurricanes and the importance of disaster preparedness, response, and recovery efforts. Whilst I feel almost everyone knows of this disaster, some of the images taken from this time really highlight the humanity behind it all. This event gave us a glimpse at what a post-apocalyptic world could potentially look like. Many families took to writing on top of their houses in a plea of desperation. This first one reminds me of a famous scene from The Walking Dead, with a house that reads, "Help," and that there is a dead body inside the building. The next house has writing on the roof which reads, "Mother, sister, wife, 3 children aged 8, 12, and 14, as well as a 9-month-old baby. They have no food, no water. Please help." Written on top of a house that can visibly be seen to be affected by the flooding reads, "Please help us, people, dog, cat." And finally, we see a group of survivors stranded on top of a building. They write that the water is rising. Something often not thought about in this situation is innocent pets. As many residents tried to evacuate and were unable to take their pets with them, they brought them quickly to a shelter to be in safe hands. After the hurricane had passed, pet owners who went back to the shelter were met with a deeply disturbing note. The note read, "All animals left here have died. We have buried them for you. I have no way of expressing my grief." I'm sure all of you who own pets are thinking, why would you not evacuate with your pets? Which is exactly what I thought. But at the time of Katrina, the evacuees who participated in the government evacuations were not allowed to bring pets. Many stayed behind because of this policy. Also afterward, if they all had survived the hurricane and the levee breaches, the animals were left behind in the floodwaters, attics on top of roofs, with no food or water or protection from the hot sun. Because of this atrocity, FEMA revised its policy on rescuing animals right after this incident. Another group that is largely not thought about during a situation like this is inmates. It came to light that many inmates went missing after the flood. Some died, some escaped as the prison staff left with them still inside. This interview from the Times summarizes the events of a certain prison.
Wait a sec. You're saying the police, the guards were gone?
No, the guard was gone.
There was only the prisoner.
There was only, that's us.
And you were locked in.
Right. Right.
And so, how did you escape?
Well, we had to kick, like I was saying, we had to kick the cell. Maybe like an hour. To keep the squeeze out the cell. Then we found pipes. Anything we could find prior to cells open downstairs to help the guys downstairs. We broke the window to try to signal for help. No one came to our rescue.
Thank you. So some of you made it out. What about people who were locked in cells?
They couldn't get out. We couldn't help all of them.
Could you hear them?
Yeah, they were high. They were trying to get them out. And couldn't help everybody. The water was constantly rising.
The water was constantly rising. So when you got out, what did you do?
When we got out, they had maybe like 10 deputies outside the building for both.
They had deputies outside the building, but none of the deputies inside the building to help you?
No. It was like, if you get out, you get out. Not too bad.
Now, some of these prisoners were in fact serving misdemeanor sentences, and others were picked up for parole violations. But the vast, vast majority of the prisoners being held at Orleans Parish Prison were pretrial detainees. They had only been charged. They had not been tried and convicted.
This entire interview is 43 minutes long, and I'll leave a link in the description for the full video. The value of inmates' lives is a hotly discussed topic, but I feel in this particular situation, most of us will be able to see that these inmates in particular did not deserve to be abandoned like this. As mentioned in that last section, the vast majority of people who were here were awaiting trial and had not been convicted, whilst Hurricane Katrina was a quote-unquote act of God. The most infamous tragedies of the world are usually not an act of God, but rather an act of his children.
A short time ago, an American airplane dropped one bomb on Hiroshima and destroyed its usefulness to the enemy. That bomb has more power than 20,000 tons of TNT. It is an atomic bomb. It is a harnessing of the basic power of the universe.
The Nagasaki and Hiroshima bombings were two of the most devastating events to ever take place on Earth. During World War II, the United States dropped atomic bombs on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The Nagasaki bombing occurred on the 9th of August, 1945, and was named the Fat Man. Around 74,000 people were either killed or suffered serious injuries and radiation-related illnesses. A collection of photos has surfaced showing the aftermath of the bomb, some of which I'll need to censor or not show at all. First of which is a before and after photo. Next, we can see a survivor observing what has become of his reality. Battered religious figures stand watch on a hill above. The few surviving structures stand out as memories of a former city that was taken away in seconds. There exists this fascinating and disturbing phenomenon from nuclear war which has been titled nuclear shadows. The blast from the atomic bomb scorched the earth around where people were while simultaneously evaporating them, leaving behind a permanent shadow of people who were just enjoying their day. As someone born in the early 90s, a lot of the realities of the First and Second World War are really hard to imagine. Just minding your business 1 second and gone the next. There is also a collection of silent video footage, which I've been showing throughout this segment. The bombings were a part of the Manhattan Project, a top-secret U.S. effort to develop atomic weapons during World War II. The bombings caused immense destruction, with entire neighborhoods reduced to rubble, fires spreading rapidly, and severe radiation exposure. The long-term effects of radiation exposure led to many deaths and health issues in the years that followed. These bombings played a significant role in Japan's surrender, leading to the end of World War II. They also marked the beginning of the nuclear age, and raised serious ethical and moral questions about the use of atomic weapons. A conversation that is still being had today, which essentially comes down to MAD, mutually assured destruction. Although all the photos and videos of Nagasaki are deeply confronting, I somehow find a quote from a survivor of Hiroshima to be what lingers in my mind longer than any other piece of media. Reiko Yamada was 11 years old when the world's first atomic bomb fell on the Japanese city of Hiroshima. This extract from her recount of the bombing gives me a stronger mental image than anything else I've seen. A good friend of mine in the neighborhood was waiting for her mother to return home with her 4 brothers and sisters. Later, she told that on the second day after the bombing, a moving black lump crawled into the house. They first thought it was a black dog, but they soon realized it was their mother. She collapsed and died when she finally got to her children. They cremated her body in the yard. The Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings remain deeply controversial and are remembered as tragic events in history, illustrating the devastating power and consequences of nuclear weapons. They continue to influence discussions on disarmament, non-proliferation, and the use of nuclear technology for both military and civilian purposes. Whilst the tragedies faced in World War II by the Japanese were unfathomable, many suffered in different ways.
And the beat of feet sounds over the land. Feet intent on training, on growing fit for whatever destiny holds ahead. Heroes, every one. Heroes by the million. Men who abandon home and vocations that they may be ready to defend democracy if necessary. Sturdy of body, firm in spirit, seamen, marines, soldiers, and flyers.
Benjamin C. Steele was born in Roundup, Montana. Stationed in the Philippines at the onset of World War II, he participated in the first major land battle on the Bataan Peninsula. Japan launched a devastating attack, and the battle ended with the surrender of more than 76,000 men under American command. The Japanese army forced the prisoners on the infamous Bataan Death March. The march covered a distance of approximately 65 miles and took between 5 and 10 days to complete, depending on the pace and conditions. Prisoners were subjected to horrific conditions, including extreme heat, dehydration, physical abuse, and inadequate food and water. Many were already weakened by malnutrition and disease from their time in Bataan. Those who lagged behind, fell down, or tried to escape were often beaten, bayoneted, or killed by their Japanese captors. The march was marked by countless acts of cruelty, including the random killing of prisoners, and it is estimated that thousands died during the journey. He began documenting his experience. The dozens of drawings he created were smuggled out of the camps, but unfortunately were lost, with the exception of 2 when the ship carrying them was bombed. He ultimately spent 1,244 days as a prisoner of war during World War II. During his year-long recuperation in a Spokane hospital after the war, Steele recreated the lost drawings. I will read out their titles and relevant information. beginning the march. Eating sugarcane. The Fallout's Baton Death March. Breaking ranks. Kicking an exhausted prisoner of war. Exhausted prisoner of war death march. Shooting a straggler. Taking shoes off a dead prisoner of war. A beating on Tabas Road. Death marchers drink from mud holes. Tayabas Road Hospital. Beating a straggler. Falling out of ranks. Hunger. Dysentery area on Tabas Road. Dysentery River. Burial on Tayabas Road. The letter reads, P.S. Rationing is still in effect here. Only 1 pound of butter and 2 pounds of meat per week. It is hard to get along on so little. Love, Cora. Cabanatuan beef. The last image portrays the hell ship that is believed to have taken him from the Philippines in 1944 to Japan, where he worked in a mine until the end of the war. Whilst we hear the statistics and know the story of the Death March, I feel these images add some real humanity to it and make the atrocity easier to imagine. On top of these stories, there's naturally a plethora of horrible things to have come out from World War II. But that's enough for today, I think.
Ekipler de bu noktada. Evet, bina yıkılıyor şu anda. Bir bina daha yıkıldı. Evet, yan tarafında. Arama kurtarma ekipleri de o noktadan şimdi uzaklaşıyorlar.
On February 6th, 2023, a formidable earthquake struck extensive regions in southern Turkey and the conflict-ridden northwest of Syria. This seismic event has had a profound impact, with countless individuals in the affected areas facing the daunting task of rebuilding their lives. The situation in northwest Syria has further deteriorated following the disaster, as communities in the area grapple with formidable challenges, including forced displacement, food scarcity, malnutrition, limited access to healthcare, and the heightened risk of fires due to scorching summer temperatures. In the wake of this widespread destruction, millions of people continue to confront an escalating humanitarian crisis. At least 15.73 million people in Turkey and Syria have been impacted by the disaster, with over 55,000 dead. Millions have been displaced from their homes. Whilst the scenes of this event are horrifying, there's one scene in particular that I'll never be able to forget. A father who is unable to let go of his daughter's hand after she passed away in the rubble.
We want to help create a world that runs entirely on green energy.
One of the things I've always found the most terrifying is inevitability. Situations where something unavoidable is going to happen and nothing can be done about it. The moments leading up to demise and the things that would be going through your mind. I get lost in my head picturing myself in the same situation. The following picture sums this up almost perfectly. In 2013, 2 young Dutch engineers, Arjan, who was 21 years old, and Don, who was only 19, shared one last hug while the wind turbine they were working on suddenly burst into flames. One of them jumped off and the other walked through the fire to get inside. Neither survived. It wasn't possible to extinguish a fire at that height. Since then, changes have been made to the safety equipment and procedures. If this were to happen again, the workers could bring themselves to safety.
Proudly we present George, mechanical Irk of the RAF Saffron Walden, brainchild of Pilot Officer Sale. His 20-year-old master built George in 30 days at a cost of £15 and can control him from 20 yards away. Powered by 2 motorcycle batteries, he can keep going for half an hour at a stretch.
Sean Hayes, aged 53 and residing in Mitchell, is currently facing a total of 9 felony charges, which include murder, battery, and abuse of a corpse in connection with the passing of Rodney E. Hayes, age 73, as reported by the Herald Times. Lawrence County Sheriff's deputies responded to a call for a welfare check on Rodney Hayes at the residence the two men shared in Mitchell. Upon arrival, deputies encountered Sean Hayes attempting to depart the scene in a pickup truck, as detailed in a probable cause affidavit. Despite Sean Hayes' resistance, deputies observed a shotgun on the seat beside him. One deputy engaged him in distraction, while the other safely secured the firearm, ultimately leading to his restraint with handcuffs. Subsequently, the officers discovered the lifeless body of Rodney Hayes in front of the residence, bearing apparent gunshot wounds to the head and chest. An autopsy was scheduled to determine the exact cause of death. After his apprehension, Sean Hayes purportedly conveyed to investigators that the deceased individual was not his father, but rather a robot that looks like a human, according to statements in the affidavit. The human mind can be really fascinating. This is someone facing Capgras syndrome. I've actually done an entire video talking about this topic, which I'll link at the end of the video. But I'll give a brief summary of the condition. Capgras syndrome is a psychological disorder where a person believes that someone they know, typically a family member or a close friend, has been replaced by an imposter who looks exactly like the original person. This delusional belief can be accompanied by feelings of paranoia and detachment from loved ones. It is often associated with underlying neurological or psychiatric conditions and is thought to result from a disruption in the brain's ability to recognize and process familiar faces correctly. Sean Hayes was clearly suffering from this, and a post he made on Facebook days before the incident gives a deeper look into what he was going through. I think someone had kidnapped or murdered my dad. I think that there's a robot who looks like my dad living with me. He was either kidnapped around my house here in Mitchell, Indiana, or at Priority Fitness in Bedford, Indiana. I don't have any money. I need to know for sure that it is a robot that looks like my dad before I shoot at it. I need some help and money. They could have him prisoner or hostage around here somewhere. I need some people to help me search for him and to seize his wallet and car keys and his smartphone, which takes his fingerprint to open it. The way reality can appear different to all of us is truly haunting. The sheer complexities of the human brain and the many acts that can shape the way we see the world is something we may never fully understand. Thank you for watching. Please interact with this video and make sure you're subscribed before leaving. Doing so helps to ensure that I can keep doing this. And until next time, keep fearing the living.